You know, when a really severe, prolonged drought hits a landscape, it paints this absolute picture of
Oh,
devastation.
yeah, completely. It's visceral.
Right. Like if you've ever seen it or, even just seen photos of it, the ground turns into this jigsaw puzzle of cracked, baked mud.
Yeah, the crops wither into these brittle husks.
Exactly. And everything just turns to dust. I mean, it feels like a total unavoidable loss for you if you're living there.
It really does. But, if you look really closely at that devastated landscape, even the absolute worst, most punishing droughts, you will almost always find these random, isolated patches of grass.
Wait, really? Just surviving?
Yeah, and they're somehow still perfectly vibrantly green. I mean, they look entirely untouched by the disaster happening all around them.
Wow.
It's as if they were existing in a completely different reality than the dying plants, like inches away.
And it's not because that particular patch of grass is somehow, I don't know, smarter or luckier than the vegetation dying around it.
No, not at all.
It's because its roots are exceptionally deep, right?
Huh.
It has tapped into a reservoir of water that the surface level plants just, they can't reach.
Exactly.
And that is the exact image we want to start with today on this deep dive. Because today we are unpacking a really fascinating source text for you.
It's incredibly profound.
Yeah. It's an essay titled Being a Human, Knowledge Too, and it was written by Schiffing in October of 2022.
And our mission for you today is to extract the core of this text, because it really serves as a highly practical, almost philosophical survival guide for chaotic times.
Yeah, a survival guide.
Right. The author argues that throughout history, during massive social upheavals, epidemics, famines, and just when various cultural movements whip up like blinding sandstorms, the vast majority of people get entirely swept away.
They panic, right?
Hmm.
They make bad decisions and they just fall apart.
Precisely. Yet there are always those who remain completely unscathed. And the text makes this very bold claim.
Oh, it really does.
It says surviving these massive societal storms has absolutely nothing to do with being clever. It's not about outsmarting the system.
No life hacks.
Right. It's entirely because these individuals have rooted themselves deeply in what the author calls the integrity of being human.
I really, really love that concept. I was actually thinking about it earlier, and it makes me think of the physics of a sailboat.
Well, it's a good comparison.
Yeah, because when you're caught in a massive squall, it's not the sails that keep you alive.
Right.
It's not even necessarily the captain's quick reflexes at the helm. What keeps the boat from capsizing is the keel.
That heavy piece underneath.
Exactly, that invisible lead weight deep underwater. The wind is trying to push the boat flat, but that unseen heavy foundation forces the boat upright again and again.
It grounds the whole thing.
Yeah, but that analogy immediately brings up a huge question for me. If human wit, intelligence, and quick reflexes aren't enough to save us, as the text claims, what exactly are these roots we're supposed to be growing? Like, what is that keel actually made of?
Well, that is precisely what the author sets out to answer.
Okay.
The text provides a blueprint for building those deep roots by outlining a series of very specific principles. And it describes this as a way to avoid the heavenly net.
The heavenly net. Because that sounds slightly terrifying.
It does sound intimidating. It's a classic Eastern philosophical concept, though. Think of the heavenly net as the inescapable web of cause and effect.
Like karma.
Exactly, karma. It's the idea that the universe has an accounting system, and every action, every deceit, and every compromise you make weaves a net that will eventually catch you.
Wow. Okay.
So the principles in this text are all about how to move through the world without getting tangled in that net.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we want to survive the storm, we obviously need to know how to avoid getting tangled up. Where does the text suggest we even begin?
Well, logically, before we can safely interact with the outside world, we have to completely overhaul how we perceive it internally.
So it starts with the self.
Right. We have to look at our own cognitive humility. The text actually starts with a stark warning about how we consume information.
Yeah, it specifically urges us never to blindly believe hearsay.
Yes. The author states that unless you have personally verified something, or it has been rigorously and objectively proven, you can listen to it.
But you must never firmly believe it is true.
Exactly. You just hold it as information, not truth.
And the text goes quite far with this skepticism, right? It argues that this applies regardless of the source, even officials or experts.
It does. The author warns that we frequently live in eras where black and white are completely inverted.
Which feels very relevant.
Right. And in those chaotic times, the people who are the most insulted, attacked, and dragged through the mud by society might actually be the most noble.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the figures being widely praised and celebrated might be the most despicable.
Now, just as a brief note for you listening, as we explore this extreme skepticism, we are looking purely through the author's philosophical lens today.
Yes, absolutely.
We aren't taking any political stance or endorsing anti-establishment views here. We're just exploring the ideas in the text. But exploring the logic of the text itself, why does it urge such extreme caution with accepted narratives?
It comes down to the author's belief that human cognitive ability is incredibly limited. I mean, vastly limited.
Right. The text basically demands total cognitive humility. It says we should never define people or judge their absolute merits and faults.
Yeah, and the reasoning given is that compared to the grand cosmic script of the universe, our human ability to understand the full picture is completely negligible.
It's like we are trying to read a 1,000-page novel by looking at a single letter on page 4.
That is a brilliant way to put it, and that extreme humility is deeply tied to strict internal honesty.
So no lying.
Right. The text insists that we must never fabricate facts.
Mm-hmm.
And crucially, if we don't understand something, we just need to admit it.
Don't pretend to know.
Exactly. Because the moment you pretend to have knowledge or authority you don't actually possess, you are weaving that heavenly net.
You're trapping yourself.
Yes. You invite mockery, you invite trouble, and you expend massive amounts of energy just trying to maintain a facade.
Which drains your resources.
And the author also applies this to how we view others, explicitly stating we should refrain from taking a moral high ground on the private matters of consenting adults.
Oh, that's interesting.
Judging those things is actually described as a way of generating evil speech.
Okay, hold on. I have to push back on this a little bit. I mean, I understand the danger of arrogance, but if our human cognitive ability is truly negligible, as the text says,
Right.
and we are explicitly told not to judge anyone's merits or faults, how are we supposed to make basic, everyday decisions?
That's a fair point.
Like, if I can't judge someone's character, how do I know who to trust? How do I decide who to do business with or, who to let into my life?
What's fascinating here is that the author's framework isn't telling you to be entirely passive or blind. It's telling you to shift the burden of ultimate cosmic judgment away from yourself. The text advocates leaving the final tally of absolute right and wrong to the divine.
Or the Tao.
Right, what is often referred to in these philosophies as the Tao, the natural flow and order of the universe.
So I don't have to be the judge, jury, and executioner for everyone I meet.
Exactly. It argues that when you try to play the role of the cosmic judge, you risk making massive mistakes because you lack all the information.
And you weave the net.
Yes, you end up creating bad karma or friction for yourself. So instead of obsessing over whether someone else is fundamentally good or evil, you pour all your analytical energy into ensuring you are rigorously honest.
Okay, I'm following.
You ensure that you aren't fabricating facts and that you aren't pretending to know things you don't. By maintaining your own strict integrity, you naturally align yourself with safety.
And the people who don't align with that will naturally filter themselves out of your life.
Precisely. They bounce off your keel.
Ah, I see. So it's about radically shrinking your locus of control down to just your own integrity. You stop trying to read the universe's script and just focus intensely on reading your own lines correctly.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
Yeah.
And if we establish that internal discipline, it completely changes how we navigate our daily interactions.
Because we aren't judging others, but we still have to protect our own roots from their chaos.
Exactly. Which brings us to how we handle external entanglements.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text dives into what we might call the economics of integrity.
The economics of it, yeah.
It touches on debt, dignity, and exactly how we spend our limited energy. For instance, it gives a very pragmatic warning to avoid financial debt.
Right, especially borrowing money just for consumption.
Yeah. But there is another type of debt mentioned that really caught my eye. The text says to avoid the debt of human favor at all costs.
Oh, this part is so crucial. The author uses an incredibly evocative phrase for this. They call the debt of human favor a rope that binds gods.
A rope that binds gods. That is intense.
It is. The implication is that even if you are an incredibly powerful, enlightened, or capable person, a metaphorical god in this scenario,
Right.
the moment you owe a deep emotional favor or an interpersonal debt, you are trapped.
I look at it almost like an invisible subscription fee that drains your life force forever.
Oh, that's a great modern way to frame it.
Because if you think about it, financial debt has a concrete number attached to it.
Right.
You borrow $1,000, you pay back $1,000 plus a defined interest rate, and you are done.
The contract is fulfilled.
Right. But emotional debt, human favor, the interest rate on that is infinitely variable.
It is. Let's think about the mechanics of that for a second. How does an emotional debt actually play out in chaotic times?
Well, say a powerful, well-connected person pulls a string to get you a job when you're desperate.
Yeah.
You owe them. Now, 5 years later, the social climate changes, a storm hits, and that person is now involved in something deeply unethical. And they come to you and say, I need a favor. Remember when I saved you? Suddenly, you are tethered to their sinking ship.
You're bound by the rope.
Exactly. You are forced to compromise your own roots to pay back a debt whose terms were never defined. Your sailboat is entirely at the mercy of whatever storm they happen to be sailing into.
And that is precisely how the heavenly net catches you.
It's terrifying.
The text builds on this idea of fierce self-containment by addressing dignity, too. It says that you can endure humiliation if you must, but you must never kneel.
That feels like a very fine line to me. Like, what is the difference, mechanically speaking, between enduring humiliation and kneeling?
Well, enduring humiliation is a temporary state of suffering. It's letting someone insult you without reacting, or surviving a toxic environment by just keeping your head down.
So you maintain your internal compass?
Right. But kneeling, in this context, is a fundamental surrender of your core dignity and integrity.
Oh, I see.
It is actively participating in your own degradation to appease someone else. The author warns that once you kneel, once you break your own foundation to please power, it is incredibly hard, maybe impossible, to ever truly stand back up.
You fractured your own keel.
Exactly.
That makes total sense. It's all about avoiding compromises that weaken that foundational structure. And the text extends this into our daily actions, too.
It does.
It strongly advises against sneaky deeds. It says, don't look for loopholes, don't rely on bribery, and stick to conventional, straightforward paths.
Which is often the boring path.
It is the boring path, but the boring path doesn't leave you vulnerable to blackmail. If you don't use loopholes, nobody can expose you when the rules suddenly change.
That's true.
The text also advises you to do more and chat less. It specifically warns against getting close to popular figures or getting swept up in whatever the fleeting, heat-of-the-moment trend happens to be.
Now, this raises an important question, though, when we look at one of the more controversial points in this section.
Oh, the pity thing.
Yes. The author explicitly writes, do not tie yourself to the bandwagon of pity just because someone else is pitiable.
Yes. I really wanted to bring that up because, honestly, reading that for the first time, it sounds incredibly harsh.
It does.
I mean, it borders on callous, isn't relying on others and feeling empathy or pity for people who are struggling, the fundamental building block of human community.
Sure, normally it is.
Right, so if we are actively ignoring people suffering, aren't we losing the very humanity this text claims to be protecting? Why does the author warn so strongly against this pity bandwagon?
It's a highly provocative point, for sure, but we have to remember the strict context of this text. This is a survival guide for periods of severe disaster, societal collapse, and those blinding sandstorms of chaos we talked about.
Okay, so extreme conditions.
Right. In those extreme conditions, the author isn't telling you to lack empathy or love in your heart. They are warning against the bandwagon of pity as a mechanical trap.
What do you mean by a mechanical trap?
Well, pity is an incredibly powerful emotional hook. In chaotic times, movements, trends, and even individuals often weaponize pity to drag people into conflicts.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they use it to pull you into codependent debts and destructive paths that have absolutely nothing to do with your own integrity.
Okay, that makes sense.
Imagine a literal sinking ship. Someone is in the water, panicking, refusing to swim, and screaming for you to jump in and save them. Empathy says, throw them a life preserver.
Right.
The pity bandwagon says, jump into the freezing water and let them pull you under in their panic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. If you attach your sailboat to someone else's sinking ship just because you feel sorry for them, you both drown.
I see. So it's not telling us to be heartless. It's warning us to recognize when a crisis is being used to pull us into an undertow that we can't survive.
Exactly.
It goes right back to the rope that binds gods. You have to maintain your boundaries so you can actually remain stable enough to be of use to the world.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that stability requires consistency. The text emphasizes seeing things through from beginning to end. Whether it's a project, a commitment, or a relationship, If you constantly start things and abandon them when they get difficult, you undergo a transformation. The text says you become like floating duckweed.
Duckweed, that is such a brilliant, evocative counter-image to our opening metaphor of the deep roots.
It really is.
Because duckweed has absolutely no deep roots. It's just this tiny green film that floats on the surface of a pond.
Just drifting.
Right. It is entirely at the mercy of the wind and the current. If the water moves left, it moves left. If you are constantly chasing trends, relying on unwritten favors, looking for clever loopholes, and jumping onto every pity bandwagon that comes along, you are actively pulling your own roots out of the ground.
You're unmooring yourself.
You become duckweed.
Which means the very first real wave of a storm is going to wash you away completely.
Wow. Okay, so we've secured our internal perception by embracing humility and honesty. We've locked down our personal boundaries and social interactions by avoiding emotional debt and duckweed behavior. But the text doesn't stop there. It scales up from the individual to the macro level.
It does. The final thematic section of this deep dive looks at our place in the broader cosmic and national order.
Like, how do we harmonize with the absolute biggest systems around us?
Exactly. And it starts with a very strict command to respect life. It says to never harm human life, which is standard for any moral philosophy.
Sure.
But then it gets highly specific. It explicitly says, do not harm snakes, turtles, or cranes.
Okay, we definitely need to come back to that. But there's another macro-level rule, right?
Yes.
Ah.
We see this broader respect for the established macro order in another directive, which states that one should not attack their homeland, the people, or their ancestors.
And just to pause here, much like we did earlier, it's important to note for you listening that we are strictly unpacking the author's list of prerequisites for maintaining human integrity.
Yes.
We aren't taking a nationalistic stance here, we're just reporting the list. But looking purely at the mechanics of the philosophy, why is the author so adamant about not attacking one's homeland or ancestors?
It comes back to the concept of roots. Your ancestors and your homeland are, functionally, the soil from which you grew.
Right.
You can disagree with the current state of affairs, but the text argues that actively attacking your origins is a form of severing your own deep roots. It creates a fundamental instability in your own identity.
That makes sense.
But balancing out that traditional reverence is another principle that advises against mystifying things.
Yeah.
The text explicitly says we must respect facts, science, and logic.
But in the exact same breath, it says we must equally respect spiritual awareness, which is a fascinating duality.
It is.
And finally, the text offers this beautifully poetic instruction regarding time. It says to let things progress naturally until they are ripe.
I love this part.
The phrasing translates to water flowing to form a channel, or, a melon naturally dropping from the vine when it's finally ready.
Yes.
The core warning here is that forcing things goes against the Tao, against the natural way. And if you try to forcefully accelerate an outcome, you will inevitably sow the seeds of calamity.
The word forcing is really the linchpin of this entire philosophy. Forcing is the ultimate expression of human arrogance.
Because you think you know better.
Right. It's the belief that your cleverness, your ambition, and your timeline can override the natural timing and rhythm of the universe.
So what does this all mean when we put it together? When I look at this last set of rules, I see a really interesting, almost beautiful tension.
How so?
Well, on one hand, you have a strict adherence to science, logic, avoiding debt, and staying grounded in reality.
It's very practical.
Yeah. On the other hand, you have this deep, mystical command not to harm snakes, turtles, and cranes. I mean, why those specific animals? The text doesn't even bother to explain why. It just leaves it there as this hyper-specific mystery.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, I think that combination, the cold logic paired with the mystical reverence for those specific creatures, perfectly summarizes the author's entire worldview.
Really?
Well, in many Eastern philosophical traditions, turtles and cranes are incredibly powerful symbols. They represent longevity, ancient wisdom, and a deep, enduring connection between the earth and the sky.
Oh, interesting.
And snakes are often seen as deeply tied to the underlying hidden currents of nature and the mechanics of karma.
So by protecting them, you are symbolically protecting your connection to the deep flow of time and nature.
Precisely. The author is blending rigid pragmatism, respecting science, avoiding clever loopholes, paying your debts cleanly, with a profound spiritual reverence for the unseen forces of nature, karma, and ancestry.
You need both.
You can't survive with just one or the other.
It's like building your sailboat with the most advanced mathematically logical engineering possible. You make sure the hull is flawless and the keel is heavy,
Right.
but then you have to respect the ocean enough to know that the ocean is ultimately an unfathomable spiritual force. The ocean does not care about your engineering. If you arrogantly try to fight the tides or sail directly into a hurricane because you think you're clever enough to beat it.
You respect the logic of the boat, and you revere the mystery of the water.
Yeah.
If you try to force the water to do what you want, you capsize. The heavenly net catches you.
That brings us full circle to the central imagery of this text. The journey of life, as the author paints it, is just inevitably filled with crises.
It's unavoidable.
Yeah, it's not a question of if a storm will hit, but when. Dynasties shift, sudden risks appear out of nowhere, economic droughts happen, and the world is constantly throwing blinding sandstorms at us.
And the ultimate takeaway from this essay is that human wit, intelligence, and those clever life hacks we all love so much are essentially useless against the true massive storms of life.
A life hack won't save you when the ground cracks open.
No, it won't.
I want to ask you, the listener, to reflect on your own life right now based on the framework we just unpacked. Look at your own roots.
It's a good exercise.
Are you currently tied up in those invisible ropes of emotional debt? Are you tethered to someone else's sinking ship because you jumped on a pity bandwagon?
Ask yourself.
Are there areas in your career or your personal life where you are pretending to know things you really don't, just to save face, burning energy to maintain a facade? Are you currently trying to aggressively force an outcome instead of doing the work and letting the fruit ripen and fall naturally?
You know, it leads to a final, somewhat provocative thought experiment that builds directly on what this source material is warning us about.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
Think about the modern world we live in right now. The structure of our economy, our social media, our corporate ladders. Our society is almost entirely built to reward wit, intelligence, cleverness, and finding the best loophole.
Oh, for sure. We idolize the disruptors.
Exactly. We
Right.
celebrate the people who can hack the system and get a shortcut to the top.
We absolutely do. That is the defining characteristic of modern success.
But if this text is right, if human cleverness is entirely useless for escaping life's greatest storms, and only deep-rooted, unglamorous integrity can truly save us, then what does that say about us collectively?
Oh, wow.
If our entire culture is optimized for cleverness rather than roots, are we, as a society, systematically building a ship that is fundamentally unequipped to survive the next great storm?
Wow. That is a truly heavy question to leave you with. Are we prioritizing the sails and completely ignoring the keel?
Are we just a society of duckweed?
Are we just breeding a society of highly intelligent duckweed? Because when the next severe drought hits and the ground cracks, the only thing that's going to stay green is the grass that decided, long before the drought ever started, to put its roots deep into the quiet, boring, unbreakable integrity of being human. Something to mull over as you navigate your own waters today.